Alright, so hey guys, so welcome to another Warframe video, and today I want to talk a little bit about arbitrations now that I've had some more time to play around with them. However, I'm not going to be talking about excavation because despite my best efforts, I've yet to see a single arbitration excavation. I even delayed this video multiple times because I wanted to play at least one, just one, to get a feel for it, but no, the game just hates me and keeps rolling survivals over and over and over again. Also, before we start, let's talk about the two changes they have made to arbitrations. The first one being that the arbitration drones that make everything around them immune cannot be affected by ancient healers auras. This is a very good change. And the second one being that they reduce the time it takes to do each wave in Arbitration Defense, which was an awesome change as well, because the original version of Arbitration Defense would drag out like crazy. So with that out of the way, let's start with Arbitration Survival, which is the one that I thought I would personally enjoy the most, but it's actually the one that I ended up liking the least, because I feel like the extra difficulty added by the arbitration mode wasn't handled very well. The extra added difficulty, by the way, being that life support capsules and life support drops are only worth 75% of what they're normally worth. Now, while this isn't a massive deal in a party, it basically becomes a roll of the dice whether you make it to 20 minutes if you're going in solo, because I had runs where I had my top tier equipment and I was bleeding life support at minute 10, but then I had other runs where I was just leveling a random melee weapon and I was comfortably making it to 20. It's kind of the onslaught problem where it doesn't really matter how well you're doing, you're just gonna lose because you're limited by the game mode mechanics. And I know some of you will say, well, I comfortably make it to 30. Yeah, I've had runs where I made it to 40, even 50 minutes, no problems, but then I had runs where I was bleeding life support, as I've said already, at minute 10. And full parties aren't completely immune to this either, because I've had runs where we had a full party, we even had a necros, and we were still bleeding life support pretty fast. So Arbitration Survival, especially in solo mode, not a big fan. Moving on from the game mode where I feel like the difficulty was handled the worst to the game mode where I feel like the extra difficulty was handled the best, and that is Interception. Because the extra layer of difficulty here isn't just RNGs has decided you're gonna lose, have fun, it actually makes sense and it makes you play as best as you can, because the extra layer of difficulty here is that if an enemy captures a tower, they will generate victory points twice as fast. So as long as you're playing well and you don't let the enemy capture too many towers, you'll be fine. But if you start derping out and the enemies will capture things all over the place, there's a chance you're gonna lose, but that's up to you. It's not just RNG screwing you over. Now, you could argue that this is also a nightmare for solo mode, but I honestly don't see Interception as something that you play solo outside of certain circumstances where you're running like a Chaos Nyx and you're confusing the entire tile set. So Arbitration Interception is probably my favorite one right now. Moving on to Defection, where I feel the extra added difficulty was also handled pretty well, because all it did is remove the down state from your defectors, so if their health reaches 0, they just instantly die. Once again, I feel like this is a really good way of adding extra difficulty, because just like with Interception, if you do everything well and you have the right equipment, you maybe heal them with Oberon a little bit, you're gonna have no issues, but if you're running around like a headless chicken randomly shooting at enemies, yeah, you're gonna lose a defector here and there. The one thing that I don't necessarily like about Arbitration Defection is that it feels like it drags out at the start. It has a really slow start because you have to rescue 4 waves of defectors to get your first reward. And I think it's important to emphasize that it doesn't actually take that long, it just doesn't feel good. You're running back and forth rescuing all these defectors and it feels like you're not really getting anything for your work. Other than that though, I think it's pretty good. Next on the menu we have Arbitration Defense, which I don't really like, but I think it's mostly the fact that I'm not the biggest fan of Operative Defense. I prefer the standard sort of cryopod defense. This one was pretty bad in its first iteration because it would just drag on and on and on, and it would sometimes take upwards of 30 minutes to finish 10 waves and get your reward. But now that they've sped it up with one of the hotfixes, it's actually not too bad. I really think I dislike it mostly because it's Operative Defense and not Cryopod Defense, and I even understand why they decided to go with Operative Defense for higher level content. It prevents you from camping the Cryopod really hard in like a frost bubble or something. But I don't think it actually adds an awful lot, because instead of actually being vulnerable inside a frost bubble, I mean, if the enemies charge past your frost bubble, they can still kill you. You just pick Limbo and make the operative invulnerable by putting them into the rift. So all in all, gameplay and mechanics wise, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with Arbitration Defense, it's just that I'm not a big fan of Operative Defense. And finally we have Arbitration Infested Salvage, which I don't think I can say much about, because I don't think I've done enough of the normal Infested Salvage to kind of compare the two. But overall, from the few runs that I didn't find any sort of gameplay or mechanics issues, and it didn't feel like it was dragging out. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, both in solo and in party mode. The other difficulty in this one, by the way, is that the consoles that you have to protect with the bubble only have half their normal health. And I once again feel like this is a pretty good way to add some extra difficulty, because if you're playing well, the consoles will be taking hardly any damage, but if you screw it up, they get destroyed much faster. And just to quickly mention excavation, even though I haven't played it, all they did there is made it so that you get a reward every second excavator rather than with every excavator you do, and they increased the defense time on the excavator to 3 minutes. And I really don't think that would change the mission too terribly much, and since I like normal excavation, I think I would enjoy the arbitration version as well. Now let's talk a little bit about the arbitration drones, which a lot of people seem to have a problem with, because they just fly around and they make everything around them immune. They're also immune to a lot of stuff, like for example, Messa's Peacemaker won't target them at all, and Amprex won't chain onto them. You have to hit the drone with the primary beam and it will then chain off of them, just not onto them. And while I don't necessarily have a problem with the drones, I thought I would hate them, but I don't think they're that big of a deal. I think the drones themselves being immune to things is kind of bollocks, particularly like Amprex not chaining onto them. Though I do like the fact that they made them fly just low enough so you can reliably hit them with the melee weapons. One issue that I do have with the drones though kind of leads us on to the next topic, which is the weapon and Warframe buffs. I always, and I do mean always, run the Arca Plasmor because you can take the drones out reliably, which kinda takes the weapon buffs out of the picture because I don't pay attention to them at all, and the Warframe buffs are, well, kind of meh at best. And I mostly ignored them as well because, and this kind of leads us to another topic, there are no revives. And since the enemy start at level 60 and they scale pretty damn fast in certain mission types, I'm not gonna take a Warframe just because it has 300% power strength if that Warframe just gets one shot and that's it for the arbitration. This is probably my biggest issue with the arbitrations, the whole no revives thing, because I mean the whole game is built around having revives and I can't be the only one that has been programmed to instinctively run towards the revive icon, even if it's a Kubro or a Kavat. And I understand why they did it. They wanted to make it harder, and removing revives makes it harder, but it just makes everyone run tanks. I mean, the amount of people using Inaros in arbitrations is staggering. It is, from my experience at least, by far the most used Warframe in public arbitrations. Why? Well, because if you build Inaros right, you are never going to die. And I'm not saying that people are exclusively running Inaros. I've seen some Frost players, some Rhino players, even a beefy Sarin now and then. But what I am saying is that whenever I see someone not running a tank frame and running like a DPSC type frame, they usually get one shot in the first rotation, leave and get replaced by another tank. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the no revives thing. And finally, let's talk about rewards. So a lot of people are saying that the arbitrations are simply not rewarding enough, and I dare to disagree, because you get a ton of stuff from them. You get a lot of credits, you get a ton of endo, you can get some cool mods, and you also get the Vitus Essence, which is kind of a pity timer just in case you didn't get anything cool from the mission, so you can buy something cool from the arbitration vendor. Just because you don't need endo or credits, or you don't like playing around with new fun mods, doesn't mean that everyone else is exactly like you. I, for example, have over 3,000 hours played in Warframe, and I still need endo and credits because I'm constantly investigating into Rivens and new primed mods. So once again, just because you farmed up like 300 million credits and 500,000 endo, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone else did that too. And that's kind of all I wanted to talk about. So all in all, yeah, I do like the arbitrations. I think they're really cool, they're very rewarding, at least for someone like me. And I've been having a lot of fun just, you know, jumping in every now and then. Are all the arbitrations perfect? No. Would I like to see improvements? Yes. But all in all, I like them. I think they're pretty cool. And I think that's enough rambling for today. So I thank you very much for watching. As always, guys, please let me know what you think about the new arbitrations in the comment section down below. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.